Hey guys, and welcome to Planet Coaster Dev Diary 3. I didn't originally plan to make this video, which is also why I'm very late to the party, but over the past week many people have asked me about the Dev Diary, and yesterday finally some people convinced me to actually make this response video to it. So I suppose if it tickles your fancy to listen to me overanalyze the Dev Diary video, give my opinion about useless stuff, and probably ramble for quite a while incoherently, then this video might just suit your needs. Small disclaimer before I get started though, this is obviously all just my opinion and my take on things, and I might get some things wrong, and also many things that I'll talk about I couldn't have noticed without being pointed out by the awesome people at the Planet Coaster forums and Shy Guys World. Also, I am not paid by Frontier in any way, I just figured I would make this video and look at the video itself, looking behind what they actually talk about, and see what it actually means for the game and what you can do with it and what my opinion is on it. Now, going through the video in a chronological order, the first thing that obviously piqued my interest was this shot of a queue, which, even though I feel like it looks a little bit empty, I really like for the reason that it shows some theme park understanding. Usually in real life, queues are the sort of dragging down part of a theme park, which is really boring. And as a theme park, you kind of want to prevent that from happening, which is why there are so many themed queues with their own queue music and stuff like that. And I really feel like this references that as well in a way, since there is that litter bin just outside the queue, just to make sure that if you want to have something to eat, you can at least get rid of your trash in a nice way, which you do often see in real life as well. And having that scenery around the queue, just to make sure that it's not this boring dragging down part, but the queue is part of the theme park experience, as you want to see in at least a high-level theme park. Now I feel this shot is just pure eye candy. It doesn't really say too much about the game, but I just love the perspective and lighting at this as well. Also some fair amount of detail and really good reflections, I feel, on the material of the Ferris wheel itself. And really I feel like this shot of the roller coaster is also just eye candy. It doesn't really say too much, other than the fact that this is something that I really like. The rocks blend really well with the terraforming, and really the bushes over there blend quite well with the grass as well. And that just results in a pretty good shot in going down this tunnel like that. Now to talk about the big thing over here, the coaster builder, like they're doing at this part of the video, and I feel like this coaster builder, even though it is piece by piece and they try to go out of their way to actually explain how they feel like they can justify piece by piece as being controllable, I feel like they don't even have to say it in the video, because the video itself, without even the audio, really shows that controllable aspect of the piece by piece creator. And what I feel is quite important about this is that you have a similar style of making tracks in a 3D environment as a node editor, but the major issue with a node editor is that in a 3D environment, dragging nodes around is so very uncontrollable. It's so very hard to actually control where your node is going to be in terms of height and where you're going to drag it around. And for instance, No Limits has sort of stepped over this hurdle by having the different views, like the top view and the side view and the 3D view and the front view, etc. And I feel like this is actually a good way to get that controllable aspect without having to have different views, so to keep the sort of the flexibility in the coaster builder without having to sacrifice any user friendliness aspects. And I feel like this is a coaster builder in which you can do a lot, since you have that separate control over the height and also the horizontal movement of the track and the banking and where it's actually going to go and what direction it's going to go into. And I feel like these are good controls that are useful, are easy to use, but also give you enough control over the track in a 3D environment to not get completely lost and have to fickle with separate nodes to get your track to actually go where you want it to go. So this looks really good to me in that way. Only thing I'm worried about might be that you can't go back to your nodes and edit them later on, but hopefully that'll be the case. I actually didn't look into that, because I do see this type of system being quite hard to actually get to the exact place where you want to get your track. Although obviously some things to note about this, and this was pointed out at the Planet Coaster forums, is that the test button is actually not completely visible, and this sort of suggests that you can't actually test your coaster while you're building it, like you could in Roller Coaster Tycoon 3, which would really be a shame because that is a really handy option. It is good to see the autocomplete though, because without an autocomplete button, I think it would be impossible to actually get back to the station if you have so much control over where the track is gonna go exactly. But overall, I think it's a really promising looking track creator. Not sure what the two icons are supposed to be that both look like a station. There doesn't really seem to be a launch section, unless those icons are just not complete. And also this is still a work in progress, so maybe I shouldn't comment about this too much. Maybe I should get on to the next thing. So this shot actually put some people off, and personally it put me off as well, since you can really see those jagged lines on top of the lift hill, which is also confusing because some of the other shots show a really smooth and not jagged like this coaster. What I would like to say about this though is that it's really cool to actually see what I think is an anti-rollback system on the track, and not just the lift hill itself, but also those triangles that stick out to make sure that the coaster car can't actually roll back once the lift hill actually fills, which is really cool to see. Though that said, the lift hill doesn't actually seem to be moving, and I don't know if that's because it let go of the coaster, which I'm really not sure if that's actually the case, or whether it is because it just doesn't really move yet and it still has to be animated. Also, something I want to quickly touch upon is the fact that there doesn't actually seem to be a hardline option at all, and this coaster is definitely not hardlined when they do the banking. And while that is still alright for an aero coaster, I would be slightly worried about not having hardlined B&M coasters later on. And maybe it's something that'll still be added. It isn't going to be a huge difference if it's not going to be added, but it would really help the realism and the smoothness of coasters. But yeah, the overall opinion that I have of the coaster builder is really just that sort of what they say in the video. I feel like it really manages to strike the balance between being usable but also very flexible. It really looks like a coaster builder which you can easily learn without having to deal with a steep learning curve like you would with No Limits 1, but still give you a lot of control over where you're going and not make it too hard to actually build your coasters. And it really seems like a coaster builder that just very casual players can work with and make the wildest coasters of their dreams, and really the coaster enthusiasts can make some realistic coasters with as well. And now something that JMR actually pointed out is that it's really cool to see those animatronics on the buildings as well, like that cannon sticking out of the building like that. And many of the animatronics that you saw in games earlier than this one were sort of fixed to a certain place on the ground, and you couldn't really integrate them into scenery too well. And it's actually really cool to see that these are so flexible, and if these are actually separate elements that you can put onto your walls like the other assets are, that would be really amazing. Also, what's very clear I think in this shot is, and this might just be a trick of angles, but it really seems like there are different models for the palm trees, not just different sizes but different models as well, and they really sway in the wind, which you'll see later on in the shot of this video as well, but that's something that makes me very happy. Now, I don't remember who it was, but one of the devs actually on the forums said that they put a lot of effort into the small things of the game as well, all the way down to the bolts of the supports. And yeah, this shot really proves that. There are some amazing flanges on these supports with even rendered bolts, not just in the texture but actually 3D bolts, and it looks really great and in a realistic way too. Something to keep in mind is that coaster supports are sort of split up into different beams that are all transported to the sides and then put together at the bolts at the flanges, and it's really cool to actually see not just flanges that look realistic but also actually placed at the right places of the supports. Not to mention that the support structure over here overall, especially for a support structure that's automatically generated, is really good with all the different beams that connect to each other in a typically aero hypercoaster fashion. Now here they're talking about and showing off the inversion tab of the game, where other than just a simple helix there are a number of inversions over here, and part of me is really happy about this and part of me isn't too happy about this so far, because there's a lot of control that they actually have over the loop and really what direction it's going to go into. You have that slight curve over here where you can really determine where exactly the loop is going to go, which is really good. The loop actually looks very well shaped as well, but they come as sort of entire predetermined loops, corkscrews, and a sidewinder element by the looks of it at the bottom there. Quick note in hindsight, I brain farted, and it was actually a double sidewinder element, so it's a batwing. Should be mixing up my coaster elements by now. The thing is, they come as predetermined elements, so you don't have as much freedom anymore to, for example, get a half loop and then be like Vekoma about it and put a dive loop next to it and make something stupid like Kudurix. But the entire inversion is already predetermined, and you don't really have as much freedom anymore as putting together different loops in corkscrew types and dive loops to make new types of elements, which is something that I kind of would love to see. So I sort of hope that more will be added to this, or eventually there will be more freedom in what you can do with this. And if anybody knows about anything that I'm saying or any limitations that I'm complaining about, please do comment about it, because I'm definitely missing some of the messages that the developers set out there as well. But this is actually something which I'm not too happy about, and I sort of have this double feeling about the supports as well. As they're explaining in here, the supports automatically change to whatever you're doing with the track, and by the looks of this, it is actually really good. There aren't any hits with the coaster track, the supports actually look really good. But part of me still wants to have custom supports, as nothing can really beat the customization, but also the creativity of custom supports. But this is something that they're looking into, and I'm not really going to complain about. It's just a small thought, but it's already known, and they might get it in the future. Anyway, these supports look really amazing. It wouldn't even be too much of an issue if there aren't going to be custom supports, but it's just a thought that I always want to keep in my mind. And the way that terraforming works with the coaster builder over here is something that I've always wished for as well. It's really good. As JMR pointed out, in Roller Coaster Tycoon 3, terraforming with coasters was just a nightmare. Would come up with weird blocky things, would totally ruin any of the terraforming you had if you wanted to make a tunnel. Hell, there weren't even tunnels in the original base game of Roller Coaster Tycoon 3. And you needed soaked for that, and this system seems so much better to use, much more user-friendly. It doesn't actually mess up your environment at all. Actually, in a way, these tunnels look really cool in how they sort of go up with the rest of the rocky environment. Only thing that I sort of have to say about this is that the coaster track seems a bit too low. I mean too high actually, when you compare it to the entire size of the tunnel, and it seems like people that are going to be sitting in this coaster will continuously scrape their heads along the ceiling of this tunnel, and it's like the tunnel is created around the spine of the coaster track rather than a hard line, and I feel like the coaster track could just be a little lower in the tunnel just to give a bit of headroom. But yeah, aside from that, tunnels look really cool. Also this rabbit coaster car. Oh man, I don't know what to say about this. I love it. But it's fun to see developers have fun with weird coaster cars, I suppose. Also, this is a pretty good shot for looking at the footers, which I have to say look really good as well. Really happy about how that looks so far. And here you can even see how the rails, where the wheels actually touch the rails, even has no paint on it, as you would usually see in real life. And then there's the gift shop story, which made me so happy to actually hear about, because in real life you really have that, the gift shops behind, right where you come out of a coaster. Of course you have those gift shops, and of course it really works. There is an idea behind that people want to buy stuff when they actually get right out of coaster and see all this stuff in a gift shop. And it's really cool to see them actually apply real theme park logics into the game like this. And even though it's just a small thing, to me it really shows that a lot of research and ideas, and of course also a lot of experience with previous coaster games as Frontier has, went into this game. And this scene over here is just really beautiful, how the employees are sort of standing there, and this employee is just kind of walking around there. Don't know what's up with the texture of the counter though, but it is a good shot. And of course the man eating ice cream is an amazing shot as well. Really love that too. Just a really great animation. On the topic of animations, by the way, there have been so many comments on all of the Planet Coaster videos on Facebook and YouTube of people being like, wow, this is nearly Pixar level animation, and that for a game, which is really interesting. And what Stream actually pointed out on Shaga's World, special shout out to Stream by the way, was a very old, barely viewed interview with the developers of Planet Coaster, and what actually turns out is that some of the animation team actually has worked with Pixar and Disney before. So yeah, in a way there is a legacy of Pixar in these animations, which really surprised me, and god, these animations are so good. I don't really know where I went with that story. Anyway, I just figured it would be cool to know that as much as these animations remind many people of Pixar animations, in a way it's actually true. Now this is a shot of one of the worst coasters I've ever seen designed in my life. It looks really funny though, but it was pointed out that at the forums that this was just a result of overzealous track building. But what I would like to say about this particular shot is that even though the coaster doesn't actually look good, if you just sort of squint your eyes, this shot has some of the most realistic lighting I've ever seen in a theme park game, and this almost looks like real life if you take out the weirdness of the layout. And also there is a lift hill and a rollback safety mechanism on the track, which doesn't really make any sense because this is not the lift hill, but you can clearly see how the lift hill is gonna look over here. And what's also really cool about this shot is the connectors, which actually have the color of the track and actually square as you would have with Arrow and Vekoma coasters. So that is a really good touch of detail as well. Oh, and you can actually see the bolts of the coaster track on the ties over there. I think you can just see the bolts connecting the ties to the spine and what is the lift hill, which is really cool. They even have these triangular caps which supports have as they go through a curve, and they even have these slanted beams as the coaster goes through a curve, and just these straight supports as the coaster just has a straight piece of track, which is really good to see. And this part also caused quite a buzz because they're talking about dark rides, which is really cool. And it's not just cool because the thing is, pretty much everything which is shown over here pretty much shows that dark rides will most likely be a possibility, especially given that dark rides weren't even given a thought for Roller Coaster Tycoon 3, and people have been able to make amazing dark rides in Roller Coaster Tycoon 3 without it actually being a part of the intended base game. And even without the developers saying anything about dark rides in this game, it looks like a game in which you can make dark rides thanks to the modular building tools and the way that lighting works in the game. But hearing the developers actually talk about the possibility of dark rides just helps so much, because that'll just make sure that there might actually be extra tools for dark rides and ways in which you can really incorporate dark rides into your park without having to mess with being too creative with the tools that the game is given, or perhaps mods at some time in the future, which is really nice. And again, it's one of those points which you do often find in theme parks, which is at least good to know that the developers have looked at and are thinking about adding. Also, it's really cool to see this Ferris wheel, by the way. It's not just a normal Ferris wheel, but it looks like very much inspired by the Ferris wheel in Disneyland California with the big Mickey Mouse and stuff, where it also has that track with the swinging cars. No way that I would ever want to get into this Ferris wheel, but it looks like it's a pretty rare type of Ferris wheel, so to see it actually in the game and actually look this good, realistic and detailed is really cool. Also, one really good thing about this shot, I think, is this little sandy path in front here. And I've always been really happy about the curbs that the paths have over here and how neatly they are sort of organized in the rest of the environment. But over here you can actually see a path that doesn't have curves around it and seems to be very free in where it sort of flows with that sand, but it still has path elements on it, and sandy paths like this would be absolutely magical in a theme park. Now this shot is just more eye candy, I suppose, but especially the way in which the employee actually walks around in the little store is really nice to see. But the entire story about having a basic structure in which you add things to make things really look the way you want them to is something that really appeals to me, at least, since what I really hope will be how this modular building is going to work in the end, especially as you create larger, more detailed structures, is really getting in the basic walls and getting a basic idea of what your facade is, and then gradually start adding the details to really add to the atmosphere and the overall look of the building. And what is quite often a tedious thing in Roller Coaster Tycoon 3, having to plan out your facades and using special facade sets first before you remove them and get to your actual buildings, or sometimes just starting to build a building, but then in the end it doesn't really come out the way you want in terms of shape. It really feels like this might be a way of modular building in which you can prevent that by really having the opportunity to really add the bases first and have the details and ornaments and accents as extra added things, which you slowly gradually add to the building, and it really makes sure that you can really get the shape and overall composition right first and get the details in later. If I interpreted what he said in that case right, I really hope that's how it's gonna work out eventually. It's also really cool to see all the woodwork in the round tower in the background there, because it's very, very detailed with all the different ropes and wooden things that look very off-grid as well. And of course the centerpiece of this shot is the mascot, which is really cool to see. Don't really have to add too much to that. I do have to say Gulpy is still by far my favorite. Now about this shot, JMR actually said that the water looks way too opaque and they might want to change that. But I'm actually not sure if that's actually water in the cave over there, especially how there are bushes. And this park has boats littered everywhere, be there water or not. I feel like it's really just a ornamental small cave part to just show off what you can actually do with caves and how you can sort of decorate your park with them. Now this part that Sam Denny explains really, I think, echoes what I've been thinking about the entire park, is that the scenery really is part of the environment and really goes up in it, but doesn't really just stand there on its own. Often what you had in Roller Coaster Tycoon 3, and I especially felt with the science fiction related scenery, that it was just something you sort of plop down, but it doesn't actually have any relation with the environment. You can't really mix it in too well. And what I really find with the scenery over here is that, as basic as it is at the moment, and there aren't really any themes other than what they've shown so far, it really mixes and blends with the environment. Now this shot seems to have an anti-aliasing glitch going on the captain's hat, or his entire body rather. It's still a pretty good shot overall. Really good lighting again. And this scene I personally really love. From like the overall atmosphere, the way that the entertainers work around, and you really get that very nice atmosphere from it. The animation on the hamburger over here is just so detailed, and you can see every part of the hamburger flopping around like it's some sort of silicone weird thing that's way too hot to be inside of, and that family just following it, which is very funny. And I like the parts about the online things as well, just because it's of course an idea that in this day and age you can't really miss out on anymore, especially given what other simulation and strategy and more sandbox-like games have done with this online aspect. It's also really cool to see the that they use the lorem ipsum meat generator to get some bacon ipsum in there, which is really cool. Just it's some of those touches where I really feel like Frontier isn't always too serious about this. Like when the coaster in the first Death Diary, or the second, I don't remember exactly, was called the Booty Rattler. Stuff like that really, to me, adds flavor to the game. Sorry about that, but it's really there where Frontier sort of meets my expectation. This shot, I think, is what's usually in the community referred to as really the greatest shot in this entire video, and I think I'm gonna go along with that. The perspective is really amazing. There's a lot of foreground, background going on, and it's really cool to see these palm trees sway in the wind. And especially this palm tree, like there's 3 palm trees over here, and the right one seems much more crooked than the 2 ones on the left of it. And I'm not really sure, this might be a trick with the angle, but it really looks like there are going to be actual unique tree models and not just different sizes. And the way they sway in the wind is not just beautifully animated, but it's also uneven. They don't always sway the exact same way. Like in the beginning of the shots, it's sort of more still, and then at the end, as like a big wind passes by and they sway a bit more, it seems, which is really cool to see as well. The bloom on the fence is going absolutely crazy though. I do have to say the bloom, I overall like it, but that's just one of those things which sort of looks a bit unfinished. I mean, again, it's still a work in progress, but I can't help but notice that and feel that it sticks out like a sore thumb in this otherwise very good looking video. And about this shot over here, as much as I like it, in the foreground you can see a sort of plaza, but you can tell that they are trying to make a plaza with just regular path type elements. And I would really love to see an actual plaza mechanic in addition to the rest of the path mechanics, and this is something which I don't think has ever been responded to by the developers. But to be able to make some of those larger squares with restaurants and just where you can sit down and have a cup of tea or something like that would be really great in this game as well. Not being forced to make your plazas by having planters in the middle all the time would be an amazing addition. So coming at the end of the video, one thing that I really like about what they're saying here is that they're reflecting on how different people interact with each other and make these things and use each other's ideas to create their own things. And this is really a very indirect way, I feel, to recognize what exactly I think is the strength of not just the Roller Coaster Tycoon 3, but also Roller Coaster Tycoon 1 and 2 and other coaster and sim games communities. And it's really good to have them recognize that and actually have fun with it themselves as well. And really my general thoughts, I suppose, as I should wrap them up at the end of this video to maybe neatly wrap up this video that's already way too long with a final type of point, is that I just really feel like Planet Coaster, from what they're showing, is gonna be a really good game. And there are many different reasons, and I can't really wrap those reasons all up into one nice little package which I can deliver in a couple minutes. But here's the thing which I would like to talk about instead. I get this feeling with every single thing that the Planet Coaster developers share, and this goes for the dev diaries as well. It's all part of one greater plan or a concept behind the entire game. Like, we're just seeing snippets of what is the final plan. Like, there's some sort of foreboding feeling that this is just a part of it, and you can only fully experience it yourself when you actually get the game. And this is really what makes me most happy about it, because they're not just making these videos to show off that they're actually getting something done, and they don't want to just prove, hey look, we're making this game and this game is looking good. But I also get this feeling of, this is just part of it and you'll have to see the rest for yourself, and we are not even getting started yet. And while it's something that I can't exactly prove, and it's something that I can't lay my finger on yeah, this is exactly why it's like that, this is something that really makes me put a lot of hope and also impatience to play this game. And yeah, that's basically my final sort of thoughts. This game is far from perfect, and I want to refrain from stepping on any type of hype train, but it's really hard to not enter the hype train for Planet Coaster yet. It really looks good, and there are so many different things which I like about it, and so many things which are very promising about the game, since the developers not only have so much knowledge and experience within the genre, but I also genuinely think that there is passion behind it, since this really is very special for them as well, being their actual independent company release rather than having to listen to a certain producer just hiring them as a developer. And I'm pretty much just looking forward to see more of them and discussing this game, I suppose in the comment section or wherever it'll be in the future. Anyway, thanks for watching this random video, which turned out to be way too long. I could keep talking for quite a long time, but I'll really have to wrap it up over here. So thanks for watching, and see you guys later.